Livestock preps, pimps, we're going to hit it up, and everybody should watch this video. Everybody should watch it. I know some people right now are like, I don't want to have livestock. I don't want to deal with the problem of that. It doesn't have to be difficult. It really does not have to be difficult. And if we're really focusing on the 80-20 rule, 20% of what we do produces 80% of the results, we want animals that are like fairly easy to maintain. You know what I'm saying? Matter of fact, the more they'll just take care of themselves, the better. All right, that's kind of where I'm at with it, man. I want to have to do the least amount of work as possible with my livestock. And so that's what we want to focus on here. And some of you guys are going to be like, oh, I live in the city. I'm not zoned properly for livestock. You know what? Am I going to tell you to follow all your zoning laws? I'm not going to tell you to do that. Your government does not have your best interests at heart, man. It doesn't. It does not want you raising your own meat in your backyard. It wants you going to the freezer section and buying estrogen-packed Foster Farms chickens so you can, get that nut shrinkage on. You know what I'm saying? That's what it wants. It doesn't want real men out there. It wants you feminized. So it does not have your best interests at heart. So I'm going to tell you that you should walk the line and cross over it in some places if you feel you can get away with it. When the shit hits the fan and that all goes down, do you think you're just going to be marching to the beat of somebody else's drum? You think you're going to have to step over the line sometimes? Hell yeah, you are. And if you've never practiced it, you know what's going to happen? You're going to get caught and you're going to get murked. So I highly suggest that you think about stepping over that line, walking it and crossing it sometimes. Let's get after this livestock thing, and I'm going to cut straight to the chase, pimps, because a lot of you guys only watch my videos for 6 to 10 minutes. So I am going to get right into the number one apocalypse, the end of the world as we know it, livestock animal. And that is goats. Goats, pimps, they are absolutely badass. They're caprids for one, and caprids live in super harsh environments all over the world. And a lot of people know that goats have amazing digestive systems. They can eat soft stuff, hard stuff. You can get a number of resources from them: meat, dairy, leather. Shit, you can even shear them if you got that kind of goat and, knit the wool and make clothes out of it. They're very hardy, okay? And they're very resistant to extremes, in like environmental extremes. So for example, goats will actually circulate blood through their horns to cool themselves off if they're in a hot place, and a lot of people don't know that. There's just a lot of weird things about goats that make them super ideal for shit hit the fan. They're also very smart, guys. They're really smart. They're smart like dogs. They don't give a shit if you're happy with them, though. It's not their goal to please you, in my experience. They're a different kind of intelligence, A lot of times your dog wants to make you happy. Goats are like, I don't give a shit if he's happy. Just so you know. But you can train them to follow you down a trail without being on a lead. You can train them to pack. And that's another huge advantage of goats, guys. Let's take my Weather, for example. He's approximately 200 pounds, and goats can pack 30 to 35% of their body weight. So we're talking 60 to 70 pounds. And I'm not talking for 2 miles. I'm talking for an entire day of packing, day after day, if he's in shape for it, okay? If he's been doing it regularly. It's just like anything else, dudes, You can't just go out and run a 10-miler if you don't do it regularly. You know what I'm saying? So think about that with your animals. They can also be trained to pull carts and can pull 3 times their body weight. So, again, Bjorn can pull a 600-pound cart if I train him to do it. I'm actually shopping for a small cart. They're super efficient when it comes to water and feeding. Okay? You can take a pack goat on the trail all day long, and all he needs is 3 hours of browsing to get all of his nutritional needs. And it's also kind of weird because goats will eat plenty of soft stuff like grass and green weeds. But the more exercise they get, the more they desire like hard brush and tree bark. And a lot of times when you end up in these remote kind of places that are in harsh environments, that's a lot of their options when it comes to feed. So it's great. You can take them to these hard places and they can still survive off the natural forage. You can even train goats in milk to pack. You could get where you're going and set up camp and literally milk your freaking goat. And pimps, think about how many cultures out there in super harsh places survive off of the meat and the milk of goats. It makes sense, doesn't it? It makes perfect sense. Let's talk about goat breeds real quick, because if you're looking at a goat that's going to kind of fill this role, I feel that there's kind of a sweet spot. I've raised Nigerian dwarves, Alpine mixes, and I have some Boer and possibly Kiko in my bloodlines. I'm big on mutts, guys. You want to go mutts because you get that hybrid vigor. Pure breed animals tend to have more problems, and that's just not something you want to deal with in Shit Hit the Fan. So I would really recommend looking at Alpine mixes. I have also heard good things about Toggenburg mixes, but I don't really have any experience with that goat breed, so take that for what it is. Alpines are great milk producers, but they're also great pack goats. They have a great mentality for it and a great build, and they're not noisy. They don't make a shit ton of noise like Nubians, and the last thing you want to do is be out in the freaking boonies, trying to keep your camp somewhat a secret, and you got a goat that won't shut up. Now you thought you had an awesome freaking milk goat, but instead, it's a meat goat because you're going to have to off that baby. Now, I understand a lot of people don't live in my situation or don't have enough property to have a goat on it, or enough property to sustain a goat without having to pay out of pocket regularly to feed it, okay? And so we're going to talk about two options that are going to be much better for a lot of people that have a lot less property or are even in cities or at the edge of cities. And those are going to be chickens and meat rabbits. Dudes, chickens are very low maintenance. They're very low maintenance, especially if you get a heritage breed or some kind of mixed heritage breed that's really good at foraging. I really like the Barred Rocks. That's probably my favorite heritage breed of chicken. It's a dual purpose. So that means it's used for laying eggs and used as a meat chicken. I am going to let you know that those dual purpose breeds like that, it's going to take a chicken a full year to get to full butcher size. It's not like these Cornish crosses, which is usually what you're buying in the grocery store. Those things get massive super fast, but from what I've heard, you can't keep them because they get so heavy their legs can't hold the weight, and they'll break their legs a lot of times. So I haven't raised those chickens yet. That's what I've heard. Take it for what it is. I also like some of the newer designs, some of the sex link designs. I have a whole bunch of Novagen Browns, which are basically a cross between a Rhode Island Red and a White Leghorn. And they are excellent foragers and very, very serious egg layers. They lay an absolute shit ton of eggs, and they're a super chill chicken. You can just pick them up. They let you do it. They don't care. They follow you around like super close to your feet like this little herd. So that's another really good breed that I like. Buff Orpingtons, I've done them. I have a Rhode Island Red, and I have a whole bunch of other, I think they're called golden sex links. They were given to me, and I've got some other chickens. I don't even know what the hell they are. And you know what? They're still freaking easy, and they're cool. They lay eggs, and they do their chicken thing, And pimps, eggs themselves are really, really big. It's basically a superfood. If you look at the contents of an egg, what you have is an egg yolk, which is protein. And it's actually the most digestible protein for the human body. Now, if you look at the yolks are fatty, so they have additional calories there. And you really do need good fats in your diet. But yolks are also filled with nutrients. So it's very nutrient dense. And if shit hit the fan, man, the ability to put, 3 eggs on your plate every single day could be a total game changer. Depending on where you live, You might have to supplement your chicken feed throughout the wintertime. I do it a bit, and usually what I do is I just go through my preps, my stored food, and get old rice out and mix that in with some scratch and just throw that out for them. So it lets me get rid of some older food stores, and I replenish it with newer stuff. And they do just fine eating just straight up rice. I know there's all these myths like, oh, you can't feed birds that because they bloat and they freaking pop like balloons. That's total bullshit. I've been doing it for years, guys. There's nothing wrong with taking this approach. Chickens are fairly noisy. You should be aware if you're going to try and break the rules somewhere, you're probably going to get caught. So that might not be the ideal animal for you if there's some kind of zoning restriction against having chickens. It just is what it is, you know. They make all kinds of noise and they peck at each other and give each other a hard time and all that kind of stuff. And if you've got a rooster like mine, I'm sure you've heard in my other videos, man, that dude just won't shut up if he sees me out here doing a video. Right now, he's like 60 yards away and doesn't know I'm in his truck. But they can really be noisy. You should also be aware that sometimes roosters can be aggressive. Mine has spurred me before. And so, you know, we have our moments where we kind of go at it a little bit. And if I slap him upside the head good enough, he'll leave me alone and won't mess with me for a while. But he's just that way. And he'll usually try and get you when you got your back turned. So you should be aware if you have small kids. He really doesn't like my son. We actually got him from a home that had some teenage boys, and I think they used to kick him. And so he really does not like small male children. Chickens are really easy to get into, guys. And I know I didn't talk about the cost of goats. It's not hard to get into goats. You could get kids that have been weaned for like $60 to $100. And that's just, you know, mixed breeds. Make sure you meet mommy and make sure you get your eyes on daddy so you can kind of see where they fit in with that. Also, there's kind of this perception that goat bucks are all aggressive and are going to hit you every time you got your back turned. That's not the case, dudes. I've had a number of goat bucks and none of them have nailed me. None of them have tried to hit me. My rams, those are a completely different story. You better watch your back. The goat bucks aren't a big problem at all. They can be kind of destructive, so you have to be aware of that. And you don't want to put them anywhere where you don't want them eating your bushes or your trees in your yard because they're going to find a way to get to that shit unless you really block it off. And they will eat your stuff. They will try and get in your garden. They'll try and get in your orchard. And especially if you have trees that are all pretty. Man, they're going to try to destroy that shit. So beware of that. Something else I should mention about goats. Do not handle them by their horns. If you start grabbing them by their horns, that's where they start to think, oh, it's okay for us to play this game now. If you use their horns against them, they're going to use their horns against you. So I've been really, really good about not grabbing them by the horns. I have had to do it before, but I really try not to do that. Chickens are not hard to get into, guys. You can buy baby chicks for a real affordable price. And you're really looking at the feed expense and the expense of the heat lamp to, you know, get them old enough where they're fully feathered and they can go outside. So it's really not expensive to get into chickens. You might have to clip wings depending on where you are if you don't want them going over fences and that kind of stuff in your yard. And so that could be a little bit of extra work you have to do. I think you do it once a year. Guys, I'll tell you what, I've never clipped any of my chicken wings. It kind of helps them get away from predators faster, having the extra wing on there. And I'm not in a place where I need to clip them. So you'll probably want to look into that if you're thinking about going the chicken route. Meat rabbits. This is the other one, guys. And other than the cage expense and the expense of the initial animals, which is not much at all, we're talking $20, $25 for non-papered rabbits, $50 to $60 for papered rabbits, which you really don't want paper rabbits, right? You don't, trust me. I have paper rabbits and they have more issues. So the mixed breeds that we have do better. Okay. That's just the bottom line. Cages tend to be more expensive to get started, but you can always build something. especially if you have some spare lumber laying around, and make that much cheaper to get into. I've got some kind of nice hutches and built them when the lumber expenses were freaking skyrocketing after COVID. So it was quite a bit of money. I'm probably like $350 a piece into my 2 3-cage hutches. Yeah, ouch. Well, the prices have come way down. So to build something similar to mine, it wouldn't cost you as much. And really, guys, just to get into it, and even just to have some extra meat rabbits running around, if you had 3 cages, 1 buck and 2 does, it could make all the difference for you. And these meat rabbits, they're not noisy. Unless they start fighting, and they usually don't do that until they're starting to get close to breeding age. You're talking like 5 months. But they grow very, very rapidly. And in 6 months, you're going to have a meat bunny that's 8 to 10 pounds. Big ass rabbits. And they're also much more fatty than wild rabbits. That whole thing about, oh, you can't survive only on wild rabbits, which I do agree with. I'm not going to say that rabbit starvation is not a real thing. I think that there's some misconceptions about why it is what it is. And I'm going to get into that in a later video. But for the sake of this video here, these meat-raised rabbits in your backyard have quite a bit of fat on them when you butcher them. Okay, quite a bit, especially if you let them get, near full size. Okay, and you do need additional cages to do that because they will start fighting and breeding when they get around that 5-month mark. If you find yourself in a situation where you can't run down to the feed store like you will in Shit Hit the Fan, it's not hard to go out and just cut shit that's growing naturally and feed it to your rabbits. You just need to make sure that these kind of things grow in your area. And there are some things that they're not supposed to eat that can be, dangerous for them. I don't have that problem out here. I have my kids go and cut feed for them about half the year. And the other half of the year, I feed them alfalfa pellets. You could also stockpile alfalfa pellets or even alfalfa flake if you felt you had to. I will let you know that using the flake method, you see more waste. They tend to knock a good bit of it off the stems, and it ends up down beneath your hutches. So I don't think you're not really saving a lot of money there to go buy bales of alfalfa versus bags of alfalfa pellets. Cons to the meat rabbits is that they are a small animal and they're going to be really dependent on you making sure that they have water and food every day because they live in a cage, And they also can die if they don't get enough water for just a couple of days. They're very, very dependent on having access to it. And if they don't, they'll straight up kick the bucket, man. We've lost a number of our meat rabbits breeders because my kids weren't taking care of them. And my wife and I like to get out and go, camp for like 3-4 days and kind of get away from kids, get a break and all that, and get out in the boonies. And you guys will see more of that after this summer kicks off. But my kids weren't taking care of my rabbits while I was gone. And as a result, I lost a number of them. My tripod is taking a shit on me, so we're just going to finish this up by holding it. So that's one of the biggest cons, is that you really just have to, pay attention to your bunnies, and you got to check them multiple times a day, every day. Whereas chickens are fairly fire and forget, with the exception of checking their water feeder every once in a while, and throwing out some scratch maybe here and there in the wintertime to help them get through like a hard winter. There is something else I should mention about chicken and rabbits. There's something called tractors, okay, which is basically this kind of setup where it's like a cage, but it's on wheels, kind of like a mobile cage, but it's open to the ground. So you can put your chickens, put your rabbits in there, and just basically move it around when you need to, and they'll mow your lawn or scratch for bugs and do all that kind of thing. You don't want to leave them in something like that overnight, because rabbits will just dig their way out, and predators might dig their way in. So, it's a little more trouble to put them in there and take them out, but it can definitely save you money on feed down the road. I think that's it, guys. I'm going to wrap it right there. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like, share, subscribe to the channel, comments down below. If you raise these kind of animals, what did I leave out? There's always something that doesn't make it into these videos, and usually it ends up making it into my info dumps that I do for my patrons on Patreon. So if you're interested in a lot more information, get on there. The link's in my description. Come support the channel, guys. We can do a lot more with some additional funding, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.